Hi, it's Darlene again. We were talking about different kinds of love in our last video series, according to Plato, who lived between the 420s and 340s BC. They're not sure. His discussion has taken on a whole new worldwide appeal through media, through songs, through movies, and through plays and books. But I would say music has one of the biggest influences on people because it's able to bypass even your thought process to get you feeling things. And we don't even realize that sometimes the more we listen to something, the more we're affected and impacted by it. So I'm just going to give you some examples of some songs that are really well known, actually throughout the world. When I was in Uganda just a couple of months ago, there were about 12 schools that I visited, and wow, I think when I put these lyrics up, well over 3/4 of the kids were singing the melody. And I'm not going to sing for you. Don't worry. This is not what I'm going to do. This song is by Pitbull, and he sings about love. Remember we were talking about different kinds of love. Put it on my life, baby. I can make you feel right, baby. I can't promise tomorrow, but I promise tonight. Tonight, I will love you tonight. Just give me everything tonight. For all we know, we might not get tomorrow. Let's do it tonight. I will love you tonight. Again, let's do it tonight. Let's do it tonight. Probably not talking about playing video games, right? Don't care what they say, all the games they play. Nothing's enough till they handle love. I want you tonight. I want you today. I want you tonight. Grab somebody sexy, tell them, hey, give me everything tonight. So my next question for you is, when he's singing and using the word love, what kind of love is he referring to? So there was the agape love, friendship love, family love, and then there's, of course, the eros love, treating somebody like pizza. When I ask this question in a classroom or an auditorium, everyone's yelling out, eros! So this is the taking kind of love. He's using the word give me, right? Instead of I want to give you. He's saying things that it's conditional. It's grab somebody sexy. It's temporary. It's just tonight. And it's using. It's completely selfish love. And yet it's got such a catchy beat. We have kids singing it all over the world. Then there's this song. How about this song? What do you think? Well, let me just make that larger for you so you can read it yourself. If I got locked away and we lost it all today, tell me honestly, would you still love me the same? If I showed you my flaws, if I couldn't be strong, tell me honestly, would you still love me the same? What kind of love is Adam Levine singing about? What is he longing for? And the response from almost everyone is, oh, he's asking for agape. No matter what, would you be willing, please, if I'm no longer famous and wealthy and my reputation's in shatters, would you be there for me? It's that unconditional, no matter what, that we all long for. All right. Well, I'm going to suggest to you that there is kind of a recipe surrounding how to find the person of your dreams, the love of your life. And I'll just call it the Hollywood recipe, putting all the media under the term Hollywood. I would suggest to you that most of the advice is to, like in anything that you want to get good at, you want to do it early, you want to try it out with many people, you want to throw yourself wholeheartedly into it and experiment. So the suggestion is to date early, date many, date any, give your heart and your body away, experiment, and do it quickly. This has been reinforced over the years when I share this slide, and I have so many people come up to me afterwards and say, oh, that's how I lived my life. And it was in tatters. I mean, I want to understand a whole different way, and thank you for helping me understand. So even though it's a slide I've used for a very long time, I keep getting responses like that from others. The experimentation right now around the world is being encouraged in educational institutions as well. They're echoing Hollywood, saying, you know what, you just need to try different people out. Well, this is not the same thing as trying different instruments if you're musical, or sports if you're athletic. remember, we're designed to connect and stay connected. It physiologically hurts us to disconnect. So experimentation, especially with giving your body away, is actually a bit of a concern. And we're going to see why that is in the future. Giving your heart away, since we're designed for love. And if we jump into a relationship with somebody, hoping that they will treat us like agape, and instead it's like eros, pizza love, then it takes a while to recover. So in terms of the media, what is their message surrounding sex, surrounding giving your body away? Well, I suggest to you there's two big messages. One is that sex is no big deal. It's really nothing. Why are we even talking about it, really? Other than we should be talking about positioning, or we should be talking about how to make it more pleasurable. But it's really nothing. It's like a handshake. You could play basketball, have pizza, have sex. It's just an expected part of a relationship. It's really no big deal. But conversely, the other message is that it is the biggest deal in the whole world, and something's wrong with you if you're not having it. If you want to see people get really empathetic in a movie or a TV series, have one of the characters come in saying they haven't had sex in a while, and the others are they treat it like it's an illness. Like, are you okay? I mean, seriously, we need to find somebody. Maybe we could pay somebody. We wouldn't want you going without. This is essential. In fact, it's not good for your health. You're going to blow up one of these days if you don't have sex. You'll just be walking along, like minding your own business, and all of a sudden, you're going to explode. Like, we'll find you just a pile on the sidewalk and having to scoop you up and put a little tombstone next to you saying, didn't get any, right? It's treated like essential, and you have to be an expert in this area. Well, those are two pretty powerful messages, aren't they? Like, they're pretty significant messages. But before we agree with and kind of hold on to messages that we hear, we want to explore what the motive is behind those messages. And media definitely has a motive. And when I ask students, what's the bottom line? What do you know the media really wants from you? Their answer is money. And we know that because there's an old little saying, sex sells, that marketers understand very well. In fact, if we're driving along and we see a billboard or a poster and it is advertising something like tires, and honestly, I think tires are important, but I really don't care about tires. That's kind of my husband's domain. I'm not going to stare at that picture. The way you can get me to look at that photo just a little bit longer would be to put a sexualized image next to it, right? Somebody, a girl in a bikini, or a guy with his shirt ripped open and some, coconut oil on his chest. And my husband, the first time he heard me say that, was like, seriously, darling, coconut oil? I'm like, well, they're always shiny whenever they're shown in photos like that. So that's what I figured, probably coconut oil. So those kind of images will make people stop for just a moment. In fact, 17 to 40% longer is the research done, that people will look that much longer at a sexualized image. And the advertisers are hoping that you will kind of connect the dots and like, maybe I do need to consider a new set of tires. I don't know. But it's used so consistently that we see musicians, we see artists, producers, writers, we see them pushing the envelope more and more to create a bit of a shocking sensation, understanding that there's a selling feature in piquing people's interests in areas of sexuality. And yet only 1.2% of the references to sex in the media will even mention the actual risks of sexual activity. Now, when I talk about the risks of sexual activity, there are, obviously we know there are sexually transmitted infections out there, but when's the last time you've actually seen a conversation in a TV series or a movie where sex is involved, that they stop before they engage in sexual activity and say, you know what, I just need to know, when's the last time you've been tested? Have you ever seen any kind of questioning around that? Understanding that There is, the idea that a condom can stop everything. A condom is just like protection. Well, it is safer, but it's not safe. We know that condoms would protect anywhere from, maybe, I don't know. No, I do know. Sorry. I just talked to an STI nurse who's just been updated with the latest, and it's anywhere between 20 and 80% protection for half of the STIs that are incurable, actually. So it's not safe. It's safer, and only if used properly. And even then, that's not even talking about the heart, how we're wired to connect and stay connected, which is why I rarely will do workshops on STIs. I mean, I can give the information that is credible, but most especially young people and teenagers will think, that's not going to be me. I'm not going to be one of the statistics, and that's a fair assessment of how we all kind of see bad things happen to people, hear people talk about things, and go, "I hope that never happens." And that's that's human nature. But when it's consistent, it's like it's propped up by the media in that they don't even mention it. The messaging is, it really is no big deal. And it is the biggest deal in the whole world. It doesn't address unplanned pregnancies, but it definitely doesn't talk about how it becomes difficult over time to connect when you've been disconnected if you engage in sex in a really casual way or a very serious way, but the relationship doesn't last. And we'll talk about how that impacts. In fact, I appreciate this quote from Amanda, who's 16. She said, in a typical high school, the more detached you are from your sexuality, the cooler you are. And, I can't really say that I'm talking about media if I don't address pornography, which is available, affordable, and anonymous. In fact, much of pornography is free, and it is targeted towards children. The average age of first exposure in Canada to pornography is the age 8. And when I share that, it's, what? Well, pornography is ubiquitous. It's everywhere. It's in music videos. It's in Netflix series. It's like pornography would be shocking sexualized images, right? And the problem is that shame is not our friend in this conversation, and yet so many people don't know how to talk about this. And they don't know how to think about it because they're already caught with the whole experience of having a shocking image presented to them. Now, this is the norepinephrine hormone. It's called the paperclip hormone. When a person is looking at a shocking image, it paperclips in the back of their brain so they can pull it out later to think about it. For the average adult male, it takes 20 seconds for that norepinephrine hormone. Let's say they're watching pornography or presented with a picture of pornography. They have to look at it for 20 seconds in order for it to paperclip. For the average child, it's 0.3. Isn't that crazy? They don't even get a chance to choose to look away and have it not impact them. And now it is becoming considered the most influential sex education in the world. When my husband and I were invited to Nepal, this was a year after the earthquakes. I think it was about 8 years ago. People were still living in tents, and yet they wanted us not so much to bring supplies. That's not why they invited us. They asked us to come to teach them about how to have conversations around healthy sexuality, because pornography was becoming such a huge influencer, and they said it's ripping our culture apart. Our relationships are falling apart because pornography does teach you. And what it teaches you is a real body isn't good enough, one body isn't good enough, and therefore your partner's body won't be good enough. And the answer will only be more porn. Because again, what is the bottom line for pornography producers? It's money. And that's the reason they target children through watching, they get them through gaming, and they get them through child websites, child toy websites. And the stories I've heard have had kids just innocently Googling something, a recipe, and all of a sudden, shocking, violent pornography is facing them. And what it teaches them, essentially, is that if you look what is fake for too long, you'll begin to find fault in what is real, including yourself. Having a problem with your body, having a problem with other people's bodies, not seeing them as precious and valuable. It's actually training the brain to see them like pizza, right? These are some of the most common messages around pornography. I would suggest that in so much of the research that I've done, the most common script is essentially that somebody starts off saying no to sexual advances, but in the end, their no really was just a tease, and they're really grateful for the punishing or the abusive sex that they've experienced. People are treated like parts. Rape is a joke, and that is becoming more and more evident as people are creating their own porn. Commitment is seen as boring. The idea of being with one person for your whole life, when your brain is used to clicking from one image to another, and violence is a turn on. 88% of pornography is violent. And people are ultimately usable, disposable, and replaceable. How does that train a brain for agape, a selfless, sacrificial, unconditional, committed, giving relationship that we all long for? I mean, let's go back to that. Let's think about that for a moment. If I was to send you into a neighborhood and ask you, what would you like, what have you experienced the most? Eros or agape? Most people would say Eros. And if I would ask that same person, what would you like to experience more of, Eros or agape? They would say agape. Because you see, we gravitate towards those kinds of stories. People who will run into burning buildings, people who will sacrifice for another person. And we all long for someone to say about us, man, you're worth melting for, as Olaf did to Anna. So pornography actually trains our brain in the exact opposite direction. What I do appreciate so much is the training I received probably 15, maybe 20 years ago. Dr. Doug Weiss was talking about the difference between neural pathways and neural ditches, how you can literally train your brain to have sexual experiences from one person to another, or whether it's pornography and stimulation, self-stimulation, which would be masturbation, one image to another image to another. You can have little pathways in your brain that create confusion and frustration. Even though initially it feels good, it creates a dissatisfaction in the end. Or you can develop a neural ditch in your brain that, from having sexual experiences with just one person over a period of a lifetime, you're traveling that pathway over and over and over and over and over and over again, to the point where your brain actually turns it into a ditch. So just even thinking about that person creates a sense of well-being and joy and pleasure and attraction. So have you ever been around a little old couple where he holds her hand and says, we've been together for 60 years and she's more beautiful today than the day I met her? And people around them go, oh, that's so sweet. And then they take a closer look, go, oh, that's so sad. He's gone a little blind. No, he hasn't gone blind. Or even if he has, he literally finds his wife, if he's been faithful to her, if he's gotten rid of pornography, stayed away from other relationships, he literally finds his wife more and more beautiful and is more and more satisfied by her because of the neural ditch in his brain. Incredible. So a woman, instead of becoming more and more insecure over her lifetime, she can become more and more secure if her husband chooses to be faithful. These were adult brains that were studied, adult male brains, and they had all these men coming into a controlled room where they were invited to, they had been partnered with a woman over decades, and they were looking at pictures of beautiful women on a table. And these all men all claimed to be faithful to their wives, and they would move around with no one guiding them, with the wife not present. They would gravitate towards pictures of women who looked like their wives. If early on in their marriage, the woman was kind of shaped like this, but over time, by the time she's in her 80s, she's shaped more like an apple, he would move towards the apple shape. You're thinking, wait, what's going on? Well, his brain was trained, and actually, because of the constant connection that he was having with his wife, the physical intimacy, his brain was making the transition. He was attached to the lines on her face. He was attached to her changed body. Incredible. He acknowledged, these men over and over acknowledged all the women were beautiful, but this is what he was attached to. Pretty cool. Pretty great news. When my husband and I do marriage workshops, I love to share that. And I get to ask people when I'm doing, I draw the two brains with just thin neural pathways that are weak. And I get to draw a deep neural ditch and say, you get to decide what kind of brain you want. But you're literally training yourself right now, even when you're unmarried. Because the confused brain is a real thing. Now, the confused brain might sound like, the Rolling Stones musicians jumping around on stage yelling, I can't get no satisfaction. I tried. I remember sharing this 2 summers ago. My husband and I were heading on a ferry boat to an island to do some kayaking and paddleboarding. And I was at the end of my series of workshops and was going to take a break for the summer. And all of a sudden, I found we were surrounded by several sports teams. And they were all high school guys. It felt like there were 90 of them. Like they just took over the whole upper deck of the ferry. And I'm just reading my book, minding my own business. My husband gets into conversation with a guy that was on the side of me. And he leans forward and I overhear him saying, breaking through my great book, you should talk to my wife about that. She teaches classes on relationships. And suddenly we're in it. And for the next hour, he and his friends, about 10 of them, kind of surrounded us and kept peppering with questions about relationships. And at one point, one of them yells to the other ones. There's a whole bunch of them, and they're getting a little rowdy, a little loud. Hey, shut up, everybody. This lady's talking about important stuff. And then they're back at it. Their hunger was so huge. They wanted to understand. They wanted to understand sexuality. So as I was explaining the difference between neural pathways and dishes, and how the thin neural pathways moving from one relationship to another just creates a feeling of loss. In fact, we'll talk about that more when we talk about bonding hormones and how it actually creates this super glue effect. And the breakup or the just not connecting with that person, not being in a loving, lifelong relationship with them, actually negatively impacts that experience ultimately. When I was talking about that, one young man kind of hung his head and he said it loud enough so his friends could hear. Do you think that's why after having sex, I feel so empty, so hollowed out inside? I said, what do you think? You're designed for love, not just a physical experience that gives you a lot of good feelings in the moment, but you're wired for connection. I had a lot to think about after that. But the science on this is incredible. What I do love is when I meet young men and young women, because both men and women struggle with pornography. What I do love is being able to point them to a resource. And my favorite resource is Fight the New Drug. It's been around maybe 15 years now. And it has such a positive view of sex and sexuality. And it is very hopeful and positive about the ability to retrain your brain. So again, if somebody feels like they've kind of been caught in the swirl of pornography and it is mastering them, and it's changing their perceptions of others, it's making violence normal, it's creating the idea of commitment as boring, they're losing actually social skills and confidence in themselves, then this is probably where it would be a good idea for you to head towards. Fight the New Drug is great. They have so many famous people actually now that have come out. You'll notice these t-shirts around the world. Porn kills love. fight for love. And Terry Crews has talked about how it changed the way he thought about people. People became objects, body parts. They became things to be used rather than people to be loved. I appreciate Billie Eilish coming out. She started watching porn at the age of 11, and she said, I think it really destroyed my brain, and I feel incredibly devastated that I was exposed to so much pornography. It got to a point where I couldn't watch anything else unless it was violent. I didn't think it was attractive. Porn gave me nightmares, messed with my sexual experiences. The few times I, had sex, I was not saying no to things that were not good. And it's because I thought that's what I was supposed to be attracted to. Do you see how pornography has become the educator? And you start feeling weird. Something's wrong with you if you're not attracted to those things, partly because our brain is moldable, and it is definitely affected by what we listen to and what we watch. So if you're struggling with pornography, decide to get help. Decide to help someone overcome a struggle with pornography without shaming them, because you deserve better than porn. So Fight the New Drug is .org, and they've got a Fortify app that's free for those who are under the age of 18. I love it. Agape gives, Eros takes. Agape sees a person, Eros sees a body. Eros is about me and what I want. Agape seeks, knows, respects. But Eros couldn't care less. I'll see you next time. And we'll talk about, how about infatuation, crushing? That'd be a good one, right?